For the past 3 decades, drought and floods have plagued rural Afghanistan. As a result, farmers have struggled to maintain their crops and livestock, and many people have been left hungry. The Taliban has been exploiting that stress and capitalizing on distrust in the government to recruit members to their ranks. CBS News climate reporter Cara Korte has been reporting on this, and she joins me now. Cara, thanks for being here. So tell us, what does the Taliban offer farmers that they might not be getting from the Afghan government?
Well, in some ways, the most simple thing that they offer these rural farmers in Afghanistan, Lana, is just support. Part of the reason why the Taliban was so successful and so swift in toppling the government in Kabul was because it was a corrupt, very criticized government. And particularly that sentiment was very, very strong in rural farming communities of Afghanistan. And we know that Afghanistan, of all the countries in the world, is ranked 6th in the list of all the countries hit hardest by climate change. Afghanistan is 6th. So the communities that feel that the most are anywhere in the world, but particularly in Afghanistan, are usually rural, farming, agrarian communities. 60% of the nation earns its livelihood off of agriculture, but 80% of the conflicts in Afghanistan have been rooted in natural resources. So that just kind of demonstrates, Lana, the high tension areas that are these rural farming communities in Afghanistan. It's where the Taliban has been very successful in recruiting members into their ranks, and part of that is because the Taliban has gone to the doors, gone to the communities of these farmers and mostly impoverished people in rural Afghanistan and said to them, look around you, you're not getting the support that you need from this government. Come join us. And just in popularity, that is what the Taliban has received from farmers and these rural communities in Afghanistan. It's been very crucial to their rise over the past 2 decades.
I want to ask you specifically about poppy farming, because Afghanistan had in the past at least been known for extensive poppy farming, and the crop doesn't need a lot of water to grow. How has the Taliban taken advantage of that?
Yeah, this has been really crucial, Lana. The Taliban is financed in a huge way through poppies that are grown in these rural farming communities. Poppy sap makes opium, and opium makes heroin, and Afghanistan is the world's leading exporter of heroin. So it has created this symbiotic relationship between the Taliban and these rural communities. Farmers who maybe have trouble keeping livestock alive because drought is so prevalent, or keeping crops alive because in other parts of the year flooding and torrential rains are so prevalent. So these farmers become extremely stressed. They're dependent on the land, and when things are harder to grow, harder to keep alive, they end up growing poppy, and they get these seeds and they trade this poppy through the Taliban. So it has created this codependent relationship, but it has also helped the Taliban's popularity rise because they have come in with these poppy seeds, with the business, and they have been able to provide farmers with livelihoods that they otherwise couldn't get with more traditional, more produce-based crops that are usually grown in Afghanistan.
Cara, in your reporting, you say that even though some farmers have left for urban areas, that doesn't necessarily alleviate their problems. Explain that for us.
Yeah, I spoke to one climate expert who's based in the Middle East, and he was explaining to me that this is part of the tragedy of the situation. It has to do wherever there's turmoil and extremism kind of bubbling up in an area that is particularly arid, that is susceptible to drought, that is low income and low educated areas. This is kind of a recipe for what happens here, which is that when farmers decide to abandon their land, when they feel that they can no longer make a living farming, they venture into the cities. They're displaced in many ways. And when they go to these cities and they do not succeed, they do not find ways to make money, they become destitute, and poor, desperate people are willing to do a lot more than stable people are in order to survive. And the way it was depicted to me by multiple experts was that essentially these farmers that end up going into the cities once again, are kind of collected by the Taliban and told, the government is not looking out for you, we can take care of you, we can feed you, we can pay you, and then it just kind of becomes this cycle of how extremism grows.
Cara, I think a lot of people will be, if not surprised, but hadn't been thinking about climate change as something fueling the Taliban in Afghanistan. Before I let you go, where else in the world has climate change been igniting civil unrest or continuing to fuel terrorism?
Yeah, as I said, many people I spoke to, Lana, basically said this is a recipe that we've seen before. Recently, Boko Haram in Central and Western Africa, just a few years back, they rose to popularity by controlling the shrinking Lake Chad basin, this vital vestibule of water resources and other resources was shrinking because of extreme drought. And Boko Haram came in and collected the land that was now being created as water was decreasing. ISIS has thrived in Iraq and Syria during extreme droughts there. But also one expert said to me, Lana, that this is something that is not at all modern. When you look at various communist revolutions, whether they be in China or Russia or even Western Europe, you can look back centuries into history and see that revolutions are often started because of poor, impoverished communities feeling like the government isn't listening to them, feeling like the government isn't taking care of them. And that is when we see anti-government and extreme groups thrive.
Cara, thank you so much for your reporting and for joining me to discuss it.
Thank you.